Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia. With me is the Welsh, and today we're going to have a lot of fun. I know we've talked to a lot of big stars and big players with very high ADPs, but we're going to talk about the opposite today. That's right. These are the hidden gems, the sleepers, if you will. Some of the guys that are going way too far in ADP that we think are real gems that you should be looking for, drafting. And remember, if these picks don't work out, you can always cut them for somebody else. But every single year, Welsh, we know this. We've been doing this forever. You draft some guys late, they end up winning you leagues, being huge contributors, or even just being contributors for a while where they can help you out while somebody's recovering from injury or some other issues going on. And that is a huge difference maker in your fantasy baseball life. So I think it's really important. This might be the most important show we do all year to identify some of these guys going outside of the 170s all the way to 800. That's right. I've got somebody 800 ADP. I think it's going to change over the weeks ahead, but right now that's where the consensus ADP is on this one guy. Welsh, how important are these hidden gems that we're going to discuss today for everybody's fantasy baseball livelihood?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. These can be league winners. These are the guys that attribute to that adage of like, you don't win your draft in the first round or the second round. It's because you're finding great deals of guys that are going to completely have big returns off of where you've gotten them. And I mean, at the end of the day, we can't have every single player have positive returns, but you want to have as many as possible. And sometimes you just look and you're just like, why is this guy still down there? One of the things we do here is we're using an aggregate ADP here on Fantasy Pros, which is using multiple sites, different average draft positions. So, sometimes it could be one site that drags a player down, but, we'll also be honest, a lot of people are going to look at ADPs here, but there are tons of instances where you're looking and you're like, well, this guy's average ADP on Fantasy Pros is this, and it's even worse on two of the big major sites that you look at. So it's super important to be able to identify, to fill out your roster by finding some of these gems on these ADP deals.
And speaking of gems, well, we've got a bunch of great people here at Fantasy Pros, and we're going to be using them all for the Fantasy Fest this coming Wednesday. That's right, March 12th, 3 p.m. Eastern. Be there or be square. Fantasy Pros Fantasy Baseball Fest, a 4-hour live stream of friendship, fun, and baseball. We got bold predictions, we got breakouts, we got busts, we've got everything. We've got the Welsh, we've got the Worm, we've got Mayer, we've got me, Joey P, and Joe Arico. More than one Joe. That's probably necessary for every Fantasy Fest. We've got guests too, Frank Stanfield, Chris Towers, Eric Cross, Scott Pianowski, and many more. So you can tune in live right here on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 25,000 subscribers before opening day. Fingers crossed we can get there. And of course, we always promise we'll do stupid things when we hit every milestone. But subscribe to the YouTube channel, watch Fantasy Fest live, or just watch it back. But the best way to remember is to subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications so you can join us. And we'll be taking your questions as well as going through all of the pitfalls and pleasantries of fantasy baseball. And if you like free stuff, we've got an amazing giveaway. John Smoltz, that's right, Hall of Famer John Smoltz, a signed Braves jersey of John Smoltz can be yours thanks to our good friends at pristineauction.com. All you have to do to enter is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel for MLB. That's Fantasy Pros MLB. Subscribe right now. Drop a comment below on this video or any video, and that's it. We'll be announcing the lucky winner right here on the channel, so make sure you turn on those notifications like I told you before so you know when new videos are up and you can claim your prize. Now, all my guys are post 300 ADP on these gems list today. Welsh started in the 170s and worked his way to the 200s, the 300s, and then the 400s. So Welsh, want to kick things off with a pitcher at 171.
Yeah, so this is the only guy that's inside the top 200. I didn't set a barrier to go, only outside the 300. I was just kind of perusing. There's quite a few 200s, but this is my highest of the players, and kind of talked about him a decent amount so far. So just going to throw back out here. The highest of these on the ADP deals at 171 is Cristopher Sanchez with the Phillies. And I've talked about the added cutter in getting the K percentage up. We've also seen that he's had velo increases, and that's huge. Having those velo increases on the fastball, adding a cutter in to get the K percentages up. K percentage is kind of the biggest thing that's holding him back, I think, on fantasy value. He had some significant innings last year. He's on a really good team, but it was around like a 20% K percentage, lower than Brian Wu. So if he pushes that up into the 25 percentile range, and you could foresee that with, this uptick in velocity and this added new pitch, he's going to blow past this. But even if he doesn't blow past this, I think he's still coming out of value. I think it's still probably at least 20 picks. I've seen him go inside the top 150 in a lot of drafts right now. So I think around the 170s, this is a good way to start this. This is a higher-ish name, but he's still not even in the 150 of your draft ranks here. That as far as ADP goes, I think Chris Sanchez is a smoking deal still.
All right. I'm an overachiever, so I started in the 300s. That's where I started today for my list. And the first one I want to draft is Bubba Chandler, big-time pitching prospect of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Pirates' back of the rotation is Andrew Heaney and Bailey Falter right now. If you go back and look at Bubba Chandler and his minor league track record here in Double-A last year in 2024, he made 16 starts, 19 games, and a 4 ERA. Okay, but the strikeout rate is incredible. Over 10.5 K per 9. He moved up 7 starts in AAA, and things actually got better for him in AAA, which was fantastic. A 1.89 ERA over his first 7 starts. My guess, Welsh, is he'll make 10 to 12 starts at AAA, and then he's going to get the call. So this is one of these guys you want to draft and stash if you're in some sort of league where you're in, let's say, multiple keepers, right? And you're in a salary cap league, you draft him for maybe $1 or $2. By the time he comes up there, I would say midsummer maybe, there's a chance he can really make, I would say, 10 or so impactful starts, and then maybe next year look as something he could be useful too. But also, the hype around these prospects is real, and sometimes they can become even great trade chips as well. So Bubba Chandler, a guy that's got an incredible fastball, another one of these just big-time pitching prospects from the Pittsburgh organization. And if they only had some hitting prospects, maybe things would get better instead of a bunch of old farts like Andrew McCutchen and Tommy Pham in the lineup. But I digress. At the end of the day, Pittsburgh, what the hell are you doing? Let's go back to another guy here. Number 215. If you like steals, well, you'll like this next guy.
Yeah, Victor Robles. He's been on some, Chris Sanchez, Victor Robles, both been on a few of my different videos that we've talked about. And frankly, if you don't want to attack stolen bases early, you want to find them later. How about post 200, 30 to 40 plus stolen bases? If you've gotten stolen bases early on, then you need to pivot to power. You don't want to forget about the position, and you want to be able to come back. Again, Victor Robles, a prime position for that. He's going to be hitting at the top of this Mariners lineup, had a really great run with them. There's a potential for 1040 this season, and the stolen bases are going to go through the roof. The spring hasn't been anything to write home about. It's kind of like, 200, I think. Some of the strikeouts are there. He's not running, but you don't want him to run in spring. Once he gets going into the season, they've got to manufacture runs. I think this team knows this too. They weren't hyper. I mean, Justin Turner was out there, publicly calling them out like, hey, if I'm the biggest thing that you've done, you've messed up. And I think part of that is this team being comfortable with what they have and knowing that they're going to have to be a much more hyper-aggressive team on the base paths. I mean, and they already relatively are with a lot of the pieces they have. And Victor Robles is the table setter for that. So post 200, a 40-plus stolen base guy that can hit for average, score runs. Yeah, maybe he's going to be a little devoid in RBI, maybe a little bit in the homers, but you're going to get 3-ish high category. If he's hitting 280 plus and he's scoring 80 plus runs and he steals 40 plus, I mean, you're close to 3 high-end categories. I think he's a smash and deal. And I've seen him go as high as 150 as well. So 60, 70 spots higher. I think he is a prime pick that you got to go. I'm surprised he hasn't pushed up enough. There's a couple of those stolen base guys. I mean, we saw Luis Garcia with the Nationals get pushed up. We just haven't seen it with Victor Robles enough yet. And I really think he could warrant being drafted almost 100 picks higher. So huge ADP deal in Victor Robles.
Well, stolen bases are easier to come by now with the rules changes, but if you're in a draft and steals are getting away from you, a great late pick here for Robles without a doubt to kind of fill that void a little bit and make up some ground. Next on my list at 305 currently, Luis Severino of now the Athletics, the Sacramento Athletics. Are we even calling them the Sacramento Athletics? I don't know.
I think they're just the Athletics. You see they're going to wear a Las Vegas patch on their
are they?
Sacramento. They're going to wear a Las Vegas patch on their jersey.
Is it a nicotine patch or just like a... It is Las
After
Vegas.
going to Vegas, it does seem like it should be.
Luis Severino last year had a really solid season. The 31-year-old found himself again in New York, but not for the Yankees. For the Mets, he threw 182 innings plus postseason, and he looked pretty strong. Now, the strikeout rate wasn't prolific, but still strong enough. He just walked 60 guys, struck out 161. The ERA was around 391, but again, a guy that went out there, made 31 starts last year, and durability is important. I think this Athletics team is going to be much better than people realize. I think that division is a little softer than people might realize also. And it would not surprise me if the Athletics somehow backdoored their way into the playoffs. I'm just telling you all right now, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. And they went out there and were aggressive. I know they had to spend money. I get all that. But if you're looking for a guy as a fifth starter or a bench starter on your team, why not look at a guy like Severino coming off a very good season, a very competitive season? What I liked most about Severino last year when I watched him pitch was he found his competitiveness again. And that was the thing that was really lacking. I know health was an issue for him with the Yankees, but also that competitive fire that came back in a big way. And I love this offense for the Athletics. I think they're going to surprise some people this year. Back to your list, Welsh. Let's go to another one at 218. If you're looking for another bat, who is it?
Yeah, we're going to go to a middle of the order bat that's post 200. It is on the team that I like with the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's Lourdes Gurriel. And, having the ability to hit 3 on one of the highest and most aggressive scoring teams in baseball is a plus. We have to give him that extra advantage. The Diamondback, you're going to have Lourdes majority of the time probably hitting between like a 3 and a 4. Pending the side of the plate, you can have opportunities where they might, have a left-hander hitting 3. But if you're hitting between 3 and 4 in the Diamondbacks lineup, you've got Ketel Marte and you've got Corbin Carroll both on base in front of you. Corbin Carroll scoring at the highest rate when on base in baseball. Ketel Marte having an absolute breakthrough season. And Lourdes being a legitimate high batting average, 260 to 280, 25 home run guy. There's always the possibility that he could pull the guy that's going to be either hitting in front or behind him, a Josh Naylor, and put up a 100 RBI season. Hell, if you have Naylor hitting 3 and Lourdes hitting 4, there's just more guys that are going to be on base with that potential. And he's free. He's an outfielder. He's free. Diamondbacks have talked about potentially maybe playing him a tiny bit less. I think that's in the field. And I think what that would provide is maybe having him DH, but he's always going to be in a prime RBI spot. I think he's legitimately year after year underrated in that offense. And post 200, he's going to be able to provide you an easy pop of like 150 value. And I think I talked with Ariel Cohen. He thinks Lourdes was one of the top players that popped out as a deal off of his ATC projection. So getting a middle of the order lineup in one of the highest run heavy teams is a plus, and it is post 200 right now. So he's an ADP deal.
Deeper leagues, you're looking for some help in the middle infield. Maybe things get away from you. Thairo Estrada of the now Colorado Rockies. I know last year
I almost put him on this list, by the way.
For Estrada. And look, injuries, bad metrics, everything was bad for him. But he's still just 29 years old, still in his quote-unquote prime. If you dial back to 2022, 2023, he's a guy hitting 14 home runs every year or hitting somewhere around 265, 270. And now you're taking him out as a right-handed batter of San Francisco and dropping him in Colorado. Welsh, to me, this is a no-brainer when you're trying to find some depth in the middle infield. Qualifies at second base, and I think this is not a guy that I'm looking to start at second base as a fantasy manager this year, but as a middle infield guy, I think you might be able to do a little worse than him. And I think right now you look at the ADP, he's practically a free player. And let's not forget, he had 2 straight years of 20-plus stolen bases, too. I know nothing worked out for this player last year. He's also on a 1-year show-me deal. There is an option next year for Estrada. But Welsh, to me, whenever players like Estrada are playing for money and playing in a good hitter environment, I'm paying attention. And Estrada ticks both of those boxes. Let's go back to another guy on your list here. Coming in at 226, a guy who got traded this offseason. Let's talk about Jonathan India and his new digs.
Yeah, and I think kind of with your Estrada thing as well, any player that's going to put up those potential 2020 seasons, you've got to pay attention to on value. And that's why Estrada pops out. That's also why a guy like Jonathan India pops out. He hasn't gotten to that 2020 marker over the last couple of years, but it's also some of it has been playing time. 17-14, 248 average, 15-13. This is homers to stolen bases, and a 248 average last season. He's now going to be put in a situation where he probably more often than not is going to be leading off for the Kansas City Royals. This is coming off of a career high walk percentage, 12%, which was like top 3 percentile of the league, under 20% K percentage. So even if the hitting profile hasn't boosted and created into this big monster, his expected batting average was 266 after hitting 248. That's the best of his career. K percentage, lowest of his career. Walk percentage, highest of his career. Now you're going to go on a playoff potential Royals team where you're leading off and hitting behind Bobby Witt, Salvador Perez, Vinny Pasquantino. As long as he can stay healthy, I legitimately think Jonathan India's got an opportunity to put up a 2020 season. And if not, I think you're looking at probably like somewhere between an 18 and 18 high runs. Maybe the RBIs even tick up a little bit. And I know it's funny because he's coming from a very hitter-friendly environment. I think the team context is way better, and it's kind of interjecting with the time period for Jonathan India that I think he's just a smoking deal at 226 right now. That is his average ADP across multiple sites. And essentially what that is also telling you is he's post 200 in most of these as well. So if you're looking for a player that can probably aggressively beat this, I think Jonathan India is one of those guys.
I would agree. I like the Royals a lot this year too. That's a team that I think is going to continue to get better over the next couple of years ahead, and they're going to be very competitive this year again. Next on my list at 334, it's a pitcher. And no, it's not because I spent a lot of time with Joe Rico. I wrote all the pitchers up for the Black Book, and I was already on David Festa anyway, because when you break down David Festa, even if he doesn't make the rotation, and if he doesn't make the rotation out of spring training, he's going to be even cheaper probably. He'll be free. You just kind of pluck him off with your last pick. But if you go back and look at last season, the first two starts for Festa were absolutely dreadful. 2 starts, 10 innings, 12 earned runs, an ERA over 10. After that, a 3.81 ERA over his final 11 starts, 54 innings, struck out 69 guys. So he's got big-time strikeout ability, 11 K per 9 there. The whip was at 1.25 over those same starts. He had a 3.81 ERA, as I said before. So Festa figured it out. And to me, it's a no-brainer. At some point, he is going to be back in that rotation for the Twins if he does not break camp with them in the rotation. So either way, you've got to start thinking about, and some of my picks are more long-term. Remember, baseball is 6 months long. Wouldn't you rather have some of these guys on your roster if you have enough bench to keep them, as opposed to wasting free agent budget on players? And you know, if a guy like Festa gets called up, it's going to cost you a lot because people are going to get excited about it. So if you can, early on, make some space on your bench for a guy like Festa, because either way, I think he's going to probably make at least 15 starts for the Twins this year, if not more. Welsh, back to your list here. And the next player we're going to talk about is one of the favorites of Nick Pollock. If you missed out on either of the Ultimate Pitching Guides with Eno Saris or Nick Pollock, watch them here on the YouTube channel. Go click on them. They're fantastic. But Williams, another player that Nick was very much in on. Again, late ADP. If it doesn't work out, you can cut him. But he could be a big piece this year for that Cleveland rotation.
Yeah, that's a lot about like what this is like having these low ADPs for high potential. So if you want a confirmation on everything you might have heard on some of the pitching ones, well, here you go, 244 average ADP. And that is rising because not only off of all the positive words you would have got out of the pitching guides, but he's also had a phenomenal spring training. Through 8 innings pitched so far in spring training, that's over 3 games. He has a 16-2 strike to walk ratio. He has struck out 16, so double the amount of innings he's pitched, and he's only walked 2 in that period of time. We've seen the whiffs go up. I think the velo has been up, looks very consistent. Extension looks good, and health. That's a big thing with Gavin Williams. It's just staying out there, being healthy, and locking in that rotation spot, which all of those things seem to be clicking right now. So a big key, kind of like, as you said, Joe, with any of these players, is finding the right upside versus what you can just shoo away. You know, back to the very top, like the reason why Bubba Chandler is worth taking a shot on is because you can take a shot on him at the end of drafts. And then you can hear what the word is. I mean, every day I will say we're getting like this guy's Welby Marte is, sent down to AAA. He's not making the team. So we are getting some confirmations. But when you don't have those, you can go and take a guy at the end of your draft that can be replaceable based on that. But then you might get a timeline. And if that timeline on a guy like Bubba Chandler is, hey, by the end of April, we're going to let him start 4 or 5 and back, hold. And now you don't have to worry about waiver the capital. If it is probably sometime this summer, okay, you took your shot. Maybe you don't want to hold on anymore. You want a streaming spot, let him go and put a marker on it. That's what's so valuable about that. The same thing, just to a smaller or different degree, applies for a guy like Gavin Williams, where Gavin Williams, he's going to be in the rotation. And if it works out, it's super beneficial and you're happy. And if it doesn't, then you cut him and you can move on to some other type of streaming, give him some time to see if it works out. But if it doesn't, you can go and stream. That's why these deals become even bigger, is because of the shots that you can take. And Gavin Williams actually might be a player that makes it more palatable to take a shot on a Bubba Chandler, because I do think there's more staying power with a guy like Gavin Williams. And this spring has been phenomenal. But these are the type of guys hitting on these might enable you to hold on to even a Bubba Chandler. So just a little bit more. Again, he is the spring sensation. He is moving way up, though. So pay attention to the costs, because they are rising like crazy on Gavin Williams.
All right, I'm going to jump ahead to a name on my list who's going further in ADP than some other guys I'm going to talk about next. But he is the subject of our Microsoft Chasing Challengers, brought to you by Microsoft. Just like the athletes who push boundaries and redefine what's possible in business, business decision makers today are turning challenges into opportunities, and Microsoft meets you where you are with tools and guidance to help you make an impact with safe, secure AI solutions. Whatever challenge you're facing, Microsoft empowers you with the expertise to say, bring it on. And in this segment, we're going to bring on Max Meyer of the Miami Marlins. Now, Meyer is a guy a couple years ago I know Welsh was very high on. My good friend Craig Mish kept telling me, man, this kid's electric. He is going to be a big-time pitcher in the major leagues. Then injuries, and then mismanagement. It's been incredibly challenging to watch Max Meyer get bumped back and forth last year between the major leagues and the minor leagues, and all for the sake of what? Saving his innings? His innings for what? The playoffs that the Marlins were never going to make? I don't understand this, and I'm going to basically write off all of last year for him, because I want to hug him like in Good Will Hunting and say, it's not your fault, Max Meyer. It's just not. It was a terrible situation they put him in, and then they were limiting him in the minor leagues with how many pitches he was going to throw and certain things. Just let him have a regular season and cut him off at 100 innings if that's what you wanted to do. But pitchers are creatures of habit, and that's the big challenge here when you have a young pitcher. They're trying to develop confidence. They're trying to get themselves in a good spot here where they feel like they're ready for the major leagues. And when you're not giving them enough exposure to fail, you're basically putting them in a failure position to begin with. So I know the Marlins aren't going to be a good team, but Max Meyer so far has had a very good spring. The velocity looks really strong. I don't see a situation where he's not in the rotation this time around after all the nonsense and containment last year. So the challenge for the Marlins will be, again, when do they cap him in terms of innings? And for fantasy managers, how big of an investment do you make? Luckily, right now, the ADP is at 372. So Welsh, you don't have to make a very big investment on him to find out if he's any good, and the strikeout potential is there for him. So even if the latter part of the season doesn't look good, the first half could be very good, but the challenge will be, what does he look like after the All-Star break? How much can he give you in a second half? That's the challenge the Marlins will face this year with Meyer. And remember, Microsoft's AI solutions empower you to take bold steps and new ideas to help drive your business forward. With Microsoft as your trusted partner, you can navigate your journey with confidence, finding innovative solutions and reaching new possibilities. Visit Microsoft.com/challengers to learn more. Welsh, let's get back to your list here. And this is my favorite guy on your list at 259. I've been drafting this guy everywhere. He is hitting third, I believe, in the lineup this year, hitting in between Willy Adames and hitting in front of Matt Chapman. It's a great spot in the lineup. He's got batting average. He's got a little speed, a little pop. Last year didn't work for Jung Hoo Lee, but I am buying back in big time on the cheap this year, and it looks like you are too.
Yeah, you nailed it. Outside the top 250, the hitting three is huge. I think that's a huge placement in this, but I don't want to say it's everything, because that can also change. He might just hit on strong side. He might be hitting three. Sometimes they might move him up. We also know that just where you are in the lineup isn't like a guarantee for the entirety of seasons. Guys are going to move around, but what it opens up for a guy like Jung Hoo Lee is he had the, it's not quite the Luis Rise or anything like that, but it may be Jacob Wilson-y with a little bit more speed potential. But you had this like, oh, this might be a points leagues guy where, he doesn't strike out, he gets on base, but he doesn't really contribute a whole lot in the counting stats market. If you are hitting three, you really got a potential to play a bigger role in that. We're also seeing a little bit of that power. I mean, so far this spring, we've already seen 3 extra base hits, which is positive. He's hitting 343. He's walking more than he's striking out so far this spring, and he's just got to stay healthy. So, this could end up being like he hits 10 homers, steals 12 bases, but maybe he has 80 run and 80 RBI, or maybe the runs go up higher if he moves around in the lineup.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's just hit it. The ADP is super low for a guy that's going to be incredibly high in the lineup. He is a massively patient player. He doesn't strike out, which should keep him at the top of the lineup as long as he keeps getting on base, which he walks a decent amount. So there's a lot positive for Jung Hoo Lee, 425 OBP so far this spring as well. That middle of the order, it's kind of like Lourdes Gurriel, but to be frank, there might be more upside with Jung Hoo Lee as far as where his batting average can go. And this applies also for points leagues. He moves way up there, but Jung Hoo Lee's ADP feeling like it might be criminally low.
I would say it is, and because I play in a lot of points leagues, I have a lot of Jung Hoo Lee interest this year, and I will tell you this as well. I love the spot in the lineup. So the ceiling is limited for him. Like, he's not a guy that's gonna, be winning MVPs or anything close to that.
No.
But a floor is very strong in 5 categories, especially where he's hitting in that batting order specifically. That's what I really like. He's going to get runs and RBIs, and he's going to have stolen bases and some batting average. And it seems like a really likable guy too. It's just everybody in the clubhouse likes him too. And he's just like a guy you want to root for, which is nice. And Jung Hoo Lee, again, criminally low. I think that might be the best way to put it. Also criminally low. How about a 4th starter on the Atlanta Braves? Grant Holmes at 335. I don't quite understand why this is so low. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. Now, I know in the minor leagues, he struggled with walks a little bit. You saw that, walk per 9 somewhere in the 3.5-ish range, give or take. Last year it was lower than 2. So that was a big jump. So was that the evolution of Grant Holmes and finding something new with the major league group there? Or maybe this was just a bit of luck. So even if there is regression, Welsh, I feel like Grant Holmes, when you look at what he did last year, is a player that you could certainly buy in on in this ADP. 2 start weeks on a good team. Eventually you get Acuna back. Eventually, this rotation gets Strider back, but I don't think he gets bumped from this rotation necessarily either. I think Holmes defined himself last year in the rotation, looked very solid, was very consistent. You look at the XFIP, the XERA, all the deeper stats, they're all right in line with the ERA. So I'm buying in on Grant Holmes on the cheap, and I don't know why this ADP is struggling to find ground personally. Back to your list here, another guy who's getting converted from the bullpen to the rotation, another one of my favorite targets. Welsh took another one from me. It's Clay Holmes of the New York Mets. We mentioned about Severino and the turnaround for him, Manaea, the turnaround for him. So far, so good for Clay Holmes. I keep calling him Derek Lowe with more strikeouts. That, to me, is what Clay Holmes can be, and they're going to need him, too, in this rotation. So what's appealing to you about this ADP when it comes to Clay Holmes?
Yeah, our second straight Holmes.
That's right.
It's very Michael King-ish to me. I mean, this is theoretically, this would be the Michael King of this season, a reliever who is going to be making that starter transition. So, I mean, the first question is going to be about what the innings can be, but I think Michael King is another good barrier. This is also a veteran pitcher making this move. He's had multiple 60-plus inning seasons. So is it outlandish that he could push to 150? I don't think so. The arsenal will be really interesting to watch. You've got primary sinker, which is part of the low part you were talking about. The 2 sliders that he throws, it looks like bullety slider that's got just that lower trajectory. And then he throws this sweeper, and the sweeper is the thing that really opens up the possibility of this being like a Michael King transition, even though his Ks went down year over year, 27 to 25%. The sweeper and slider both had a 38% or higher whiff percentage. They're big strikeout pitches, and he's going to be stretching this out over the season. And we've also seen really great results so far this spring. Pulling this up as far as his spring stats go, he has had 9.2 innings so far pitched, given up 0 earned runs. He struck out 13, walked 4, had a .62 whip. He's also not giving up any hits. That's not going to carry completely into the season, but if that sweeper does what Michael King's is doing out there, you might start looking at like a real strikeout guy. And if you get 5% walk rates, 6% walk rates, let's say, last year he had 8%. So even if you go into 7s, but you get that 25 to 27% K percentage over a full season, Listen, it's not going to be Michael King, but I
No,
think that could be top 35, top 40 overall SP for a
could
guy
be
that is
Michael
going,
Waka,
and he's going
and that
outside,
was a useful pitcher
and he's
last
going
year.
outside the top 250. And guess what? The Mets desperately need his innings with their
Yeah.
injuries, and they can push that. So Clay Holmes is kind of a must draft guy, especially to see if early on this transition works out. But I'd also point out, remember how rough it was for Michael King at the beginning of the season. He did
Oh
face the
yeah.
Dodgers
Mhm.
last year, so maybe you want to hold on a little bit. But Clay Holmes is like a must draft guy.
Yeah, the little rough start to the year for King, but after that, I think we can all agree it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
Luisangel Acuna at 344 is my next pick here. Acuna last year, a solid year when he came up with the Mets. They only played 14 games there, but 131 games at AAA, 7 homers, 40 steals. He only hit 260, so you'd like to see a little bit more contact, a little bit more on base skills. But in the Arizona Fall League, he tore the cover off the ball. 337 batting average. He had 914 OPS in the AFL. Now, the downside right now with Acuna is he's not having a good spring so far. He kind of needs to turn things on here if he's going to force any Mets hands. However, Jeff McNeil is always hurt. To me, Jeff McNeil is a bench player at this stage in his career. He is not an everyday player. I don't think he offers you enough. Acuna has some pop, has definitely some speed. He's a better defender. He's a more athletic player, younger player. And the Mets are continuing to look like they're trying to get younger and younger. And I think Acuna might be part of that. Now, watch carefully because Brett Beatty played some second base the other day too. So who knows what things are moving around there and what could be happening. Somebody else besides Jeff McNeil is going to play more games at second base than Jeff McNeil this year. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's going to come to fruition. So whether it's Acuna, whether it's Beatty in a transition there, who knows? Maybe Ronnie Mauricio. It could be somebody, but right now Acuna is still at the top of my list. Let's see what he does in the next weeks ahead in spring training before he gets sent down. But regardless, long term, somebody else is taking that job, I think, in 2025. Next on the list of the Welsh, it's a pitcher who's coming over from Japan for the Baltimore Orioles. Now, this guy's going outside the top 300. A lot of unknowns, and a guy who had some, I don't want to say down years, but it seemed like he was leveling off in Japan. Then last year had a terrific season. Can that carry over for him in 2025? And we're talking about Sugano.
Yeah, Tomoyuki Sugano feels like the last big pitch. I mean, they got Eflin and Sugano, it feels like right now, because Grayson Rodriguez is dealing with some inflammation and maybe they'll get some positive news. But you're talking about a pitcher that a team is going to have to ride the innings on all season, but you're also pushing with this guy that has had an absolutely phenomenal spring. He's coming off of a start where he just pitched 3 innings, gave up no hits, no walks, struck out 5, and threw all 19 pitches for 19 strikes. As well, this spring, he's put up just some monster numbers. This was before that last start, so I believe he's now over. No, this was his last start. He's got 7 innings, 7 strikeouts, 2 walks, 4 hits so far this spring. And all we're looking for is opportunities. This is a veteran who can push a bunch of innings. He's had some really good strikeout success early on. He's not getting hit early on. We're looking for any type of translation, and the Orioles need him absolutely desperately with the deal with Grayson Rodriguez. So maybe this strikeout potential is going to carry over into the regular season. This is my first guy outside the top 300. I'm not sure there's a ton of post 300 pitchers that are going to pitch from day one that you are going to get like 150 probably easy innings with this strikeout potential. Again, if it carries over, it's free. It's absolutely free with Sugano. I'm trying to take him everywhere I can. I think he's also pushing up a little bit as, Grayson coming down, going to push him in the lineup and maybe going to get more starts. But I really love the strikeout potential. I love the spring start, and I'm going to bank a little bit on this spring carrying over into the season for Sugano.
There's another guy who's got not high-end strikeout ability, but he's going to have a rotation spot. No, probably not a lot of path to wins, but I think Ryan Weathers of the Marlins at 360 can at least be a body in your rotation at the very least. Now, last year, 86 innings for the big club. He had a 3.63 ERA. Now, the xERA was a little higher. The FIP was more in the 4 range, but even so, if he lands somewhere in the low 4s, I think in mixed leagues, it's still a guy that you can have as a streamer. You play the matchups, you play the 2 start weeks, and there's upside for more. Ryan Weathers is a pitcher that they have high expectations for, and at some point, I think this year, Sandy Alcantara is going to get dealt to a contender. I don't think they're going to wait on that much longer. So, a rotation spot for him is going to be safe. So I've given you not one, but two guys on the Marlins. And I know the Marlins, it's going to be a tricky season for them. It's not a great lineup. It's not a terrific bullpen. But when you're looking for bodies to make some starts, we've had some big pitchers already dealing with injuries. Kirby, you mentioned Rodriguez. We're going to talk about Gerrit Cole at the end of the show because we've got to talk about it because it's a big piece. But you're going to need as many starters you could possibly find, just like every other major league team. So take some shots on some guys that have rotation spots. Both Holmes guys. We're talking about Ryan Weathers, talking about Max Meyer, guys that are going to have opportunities to take the ball every fifth day. That is at least a start, and hopefully they can give you some quality starts in those situations. A couple more guys left here on the list. This next one at 339, Joc Pederson. That is a player the Welsh picked, and that's a guy that I keep looking at late in drafts for pop. He plays in a good Texas Rangers lineup. I don't get why this ADP is quite so low on him. Welsh, do you?
Well, I think part of it is platoon. Part of it is he's util only. I think that holds him back a little bit. But I've been saying this since we've started doing videos. I think Joc Pederson is criminally underrated. On the strong side last year, he hit 281 with 22 homers with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And that was in like 330 something at bats. So there's kind of an argument to be like, well, he kind of does stink versus lefties. If he gets more opportunity, which has been talked about with Texas, that could lower some of the potential. Yeah, but you're also just looking for as many at-bats as possible. That I just think, even if he is a strong side platoon guy at the end of the day, he's still massively more valuable than where he's going right now. You can get mid-20 home run potential with high batting average. That's the other thing, is he's not like a 240 batting average. He's sticking this in. 281 on the strong side is what he put up this past year. Good hard hit numbers. He's not striking out to an aggressive degree. He's walking. He's getting on base. And by the way, it's Texas. It's a really hitter-friendly environment. And they're going to put him at 3 probably on the strong side. 3 or 4. If they put him at 3, you've got Seager and Simeon in front. If they put him at 4, just throw Langford in there. All 3 of those guys getting on base, and their on base potential for Joc Pederson, RBI opportunities through the roof. And then hitting behind him, how about Adolis Garcia, Jake Berger? There's plenty of run opportunities. And if they do play him in the field in any capacity, that could open up a few other opportunities. End of the day, he's absolutely free. 339. You can take him at the end of every draft. I know he doesn't provide you position flexibility, but I would guess he is probably going to be the best util you can put out there, unless you had invested obviously in like Ohtani or Ozuna or something like that. But Joc Pederson, when I don't get Brent Rooker and Ozuna and Ohtani, I have to have it at the end of every draft, or if I play in a multi-util type of league, even more. Joc Pederson, hard to find that 25 plus pop at the very end of drafts. And it's really, for daily leagues, I think it's even more valuable when you can kind of move him in and out. But the Rangers might put us in a situation where even weekly lineup leagues, Joc Pederson is going to be a play every single week.
Next guy on my list is one of my favorite values, and I think it's just prospect fatigue. I think that's what it is. This is a fork in the road season, but he's only 24 years old. At 363, Kyle Manzardo, who's going to be hitting 3 and starting at first base now that Josh Naylor is gone, and he's hitting right behind Jose Ramirez. So far this spring, I just want to point this out, so far he's had 22 at-bats, 2 homers, 5 ribbies, hitting 409 with a 1231 OPS. Now, it's just spring, but spring matters for guys that it matters for, and it matters for Kyle Manzardo because he hasn't lived up to his potential. He's bounced around now, more than one organization, so this is his opportunity to lay claim to the starting first base job, run away with it, be the guy. You can't be in a better spot in the lineup than hitting behind Jose Ramirez, right? You're in a great spot there, except maybe hitting in front of Jose Ramirez. That's the only thing you might want more. But to me, Manzardo, again, maybe just a little bit more patience is what we need for him. I know this is a player, Welsh, from the prospect world that you've been in on for a while, but it feels like everybody's forgotten about him because the ADP is telling me. I love buying back in. If it's a startup dynasty, what a great value you're going to be getting on him. But even in a redraft league, if you're looking for some help at the corners, Kyle Manzardo can be that guy. And I think it's insane with the spring he's having that the ADP hasn't risen quite yet. If he stays this hot, it's going to change. But either way, he is an incredible value in 2025. One more name on each of our lists. Welsh, you've gone to the 400s. You're in the 400 section. You're up there with Bob Uecker trying to see the game. Let's talk about it. Who is the guy here at 452 that you've chosen?
Yeah, this is my deepest play here. It is one more Diamondback, and it's representative of my maybe my lack of avoiding, or my, I want to say love, but I guess I'm just going to say it. It's kind of my love for really high side platoon players. I think Kerry Carpenter's in play, Joc Pederson's in play, and Pavin Smith is in play. And I've talked a lot about him. Pavin is going to be the Diamondbacks' Joc Pederson this year. He's going to be their strong side platoon for DH. He also can play in the outfield. He can play first base as a replacement there. He provides a lot, and I've cited it a million times, but you're looking at like high contact. It was like 85% contact rate with 150 EV, which is your top 50 EVs were over 100. It was like 8 players in the league that marked that last season with 150 plate appearances or above. And Pavin was one of those. And actually, Randall Grichuk was the other one with just monster players. All that is to say is that Pavin Smith is very representative of what Joc was as a platoon player. And it's why they didn't need to go and get some lefty platoon guy. And they're going to give him a lot of regular at bats. And his position flexibility puts him in a little bit of a better spot than what was going on with Joc Pederson. And I think he can hit lefties a little bit better. He is free. If he does what Joc Pederson did, he will be a top 2 to 250 overall player. Maybe some of those opportunities will get taken away, but I really think he's a guy worth monitoring, or in deeper leagues, he is a deal because he is in that Joc Pederson spot, and his skill set as far as contact rates, hard hit rates go, mirrored Joc. And again, that is why they did not bring Joc back, and they weren't worried about not having a Joc-like lefty platoon. Grichuk will play against left-hander DH or in the outfield, and Pavin will be that for the strong side platoon. So Pavin Smith is my final of the ADP deals.
All right, my last one, the ADP is 800. That's right, 810. Why? Because he's not being drafted yet, and I want to emphasize yet here. I have to say, this spring I have fallen in love with a prospect, and his name is Cam Smith. And he is tearing the cover off of the baseball. And that might be an understatement, Welsh. So far, 13 at-bats, 2 homers, 7 RBI. He's hitting .615, a .722 OBP, a .1231 slugging. And we're already making that transition of Altuve to the outfield. That seems like that's earmarked to happen. You sign Isaac Paredes. Why? Because he can play second and he can play third. But Cam Smith should be playing third base. I don't want to hear about Brendan Rodgers, non-roster invitee. I don't care. I've watched Cam Smith now, and I know he went 14th overall. He came over in that Kyle Tucker trade. I think the Astros might have saved themselves here in an enormous way. Not only do you move on from Alex Bregman, you move on from Tucker, but Welsh, this organization didn't have a lot of first-round picks because of the scandal, right? So how do you reinvent yourselves? By making an incredible trade of your best player for a can't-miss guy. I'm watching Cam Smith, and he reminds me of a bigger version of Adrian Beltre. He hits the ball so hard. And his explosiveness with his hands, he attacks the baseball. And there's very few guys like that. When you see them hit the baseball, it just feels like they're hitting the baseball harder. I haven't looked at all the exit velos. I'm just watching with my eyeballs. And my God, this guy is exciting. I think it's only a matter of time. I think your last pick in every draft should be this kid. I don't know if he's going to start the year with the big club, because despite the fact that he did play some minor league baseball last year, only 32 games, he had 5 of those games at AA. The combined slash was 313, 396, 609 with 1,000 OPS. He's probably going to get some playing time in AA, probably a little seasoning in AAA, but Welsh, I am telling you, this kid is coming fast to the major leagues, and I want him on my rosters in 2025. You're the prospect guru. Talk about Cam Smith for all the people out there.
Yeah, I think he's a guy, if he didn't make the roster, we'll be talking about in April, in May. We'll be talking about he's got to come up. An interesting take too, if the Astros really want to take it to the value of what they're getting back from the Kyle Tucker, is let Cam Smith break with the team. And if he were to win Rookie of the Year, they would acquire a first round pick under that. I think it's the PPI program. So if you have a prospect, they have to essentially break camp or play within the first 10 days or whatever. They'd be advantageous to do it, especially because of what they've done with the roster. They didn't go and re-sign Bregman. They didn't bring somebody else in. Paredes can go and play second, and Altuve looks to be a left fielder now. So it feels like they've done everything they can. to make it work for Cam Smith, not a non-roster invitee and Brendan
They're
Rodgers. Now,
clearing the path. I agree. And you know what else is interesting too? You can't even bet him right now for Rookie of the Year. He wasn't even on the board this weekend, which I think that's going to change very quickly. But to your point, like, what are we doing here? If we're the Astros, if you could drop this guy in this order, and it reminds me of when Evan Longoria kind of made that jump and it kind of shocked everybody. But he proved that he just belonged right away. Like, Evan Longoria was ready. That's the last time in recent memory of, and that was a long time ago. Now, was that 15 years ago? I don't know where we're at. But that's kind of, I feel like, where we're at with this, where some guys are just ready. Cam Smith's probably not going to break with the club, but if he does, it wouldn't shock me at all, dude.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing probably holding him back has been strikeout issues, which he had in college and stuff like that. But I would say if they feel that they've got that covered, this is a college bat who moved up some levels. If I know it's the Angels and we laugh, but if the Angels are, going to consider a guy like Christian Moore coming up and breaking camp with the team, I think more teams have to consider this with guys like Cam Smith, just simply because of the potential returns that you can have on it. And if it doesn't work out early on, you send him down and you can still control. There's still some contract control you can have if you don't bring him back up, if he shows he's super not ready. But that's the battle. You have the Jackson Holidays who prove to be kind of epic disasters. And then you have the guys that work from day one. Right. I'd love to see it, but if not, that's good. Like what we said earlier.
Winter's coming.
Take Cam Smith at the end of your draft, and if he gets sent back down, then just put him on your watch list for when he gets pushed up to AAA, because he'll be up this year.
Yeah. Last note here before we get out of town today. Unfortunate news for the Yankees. They will be without Gerrit Cole for the year. He's having Tommy John surgery. Now, Welsh, on leading off last year, I might have gone on the record once or twice saying that this was going to end poorly for Gerrit Cole. Everybody told me I was crazy. And then look, he did finish the year. They went to the World Series, all that stuff. He never looked comfortable to me. He never looked like vintage Gerrit Cole. I don't think anybody's shocked. I think this is probably why they pushed for that Max Fried and overpaid, so they knew they had somebody else. So on the weekend, before this news officially broke, I already bet the Boston Red Sox to win that division, and I feel pretty good about the plus 360 I think I got it, or 350. It was a pretty good spot there. That's moved, obviously, since then. But look, this is a huge blow to the Yankees. You lose Juan Soto. You lose Gerrit Cole. In keeper leagues, this is crushing news. I think it really forces the Yankees' hand to go out there and make a move for another starter sooner than later, because Marcus Stroman ain't the answer. He's just not. So how do you recover from this if you're the Yankees here? Are you dangerously close to losing the window of the prime Gerrit Cole and Aaron Judge? Has that just been shut? Was the high point last year's World Series?
One thing I want to clean up, has it been, because he's going for a second opinion, has that second opinion been confirmed? I just wanted to point that out. He's going to have Tommy John. The first thing has been Tommy John. There's a second report out that's saying that he just wants a confirmation. And then if that is, most likely he's going to be out for the year. Also to mention, Giancarlo Stanton is a disaster and looks like he's out for the year. And they've lost Luis Gil. Luis Gil is going to be out. I don't believe he can throw for 6 to 8 weeks, and then he'll start a throwing program. So that's been a disaster. So yeah, back to your question, like,
well, the first opinion to answer yours was Jim Bowden saying that he already got news that he was recommending the first opinion for Tommy John. So the second opinion, has there ever been a second opinion where they didn't get it? No, you know what's coming here.
When you're going for second opinion on Tommy John, it never ends well. But just wanted to clean that up just a tiny bit. But I think you look at like 3 key players out of this lineup. Are you hurting? This isn't the Angels with prime Judge and prime Trout. Like, they're not squandering it. They're just, it's getting messed up. They couldn't bring Soto back, and their star pitcher ends up having Tommy John, their big young rookie of the year stud. He's injured. So it's an unfortunate luck. I'm not 100% sure they're squandering it. Where it'll feel squandery is when they don't make any trades.
I love when you make up words. It's my favorite thing.
Well, when they look at guys like, Spencer Jones, and they don't take any of those assets and go and make a move, and go and try to trade for a Dylan Cease. They don't do anything like that. That'll feel where it's like squandered. I think the best that they're going to do is there's a rumor that they reached out to JD Martinez about the Stanton stuff, but they couldn't come to terms. There's a few guys still left out there. Kyle Gibson is still out on the market. I think they're just
Tough,
going to
man.
put Band-Aids on a broken bone, and
Yeah.
it's pretty
It's
messy.
good
I
news
don't
for
know how
Clark
they're going to
Schmidt.
do it.
He's going to lock in that rotation for a while now, for sure, with all these injuries. But
Yeah.
it is a tough situation here for the Yankees with a lot of expectations. But again, this was inevitable. I told you it was coming. Sometimes I don't like being right, but this was,
I
the
think you
writing was on the
do,
wall
but
there.
I know what you
I
mean.
do, but I don't like when I'm right about people being hurt. I'm just trying to do public service for the fantasy community, saying it's not going to end well. And unfortunately, it did not end well. But what is going to be great, Fantasy Fest. See that transition? Wednesday, right here on the channel. Make sure you join us here for Fantasy Fest. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Drop your comments below. 3 p.m. Eastern. Ring the bell till it goes ding. And remember, when you comment below, give us your favorite late ADP steal, and you might win yourself a John Smoltz autographed jersey. That's right. Good times happening. Lots of baseball still to play. Hopefully, we all stay healthy this year. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.